Hello and welcome to today's video where I will teach you how to use fragments in your mobile app in Android Studio, and I will try to explain it or to use, as I always do, an easy way, an easy example. So today's example is a very simple app that has one activity and it has a frame layout. This is the portion that will be used to load different fragments on, and there are two buttons that will enable the user to select which fragment to load. If you don't know, fragments, they represent a portion of the user interface of the application, and each fragment can define its own layout. So I tried to represent this by having different items and in different places, so each fragment can have a different layout, and also each fragment can handle its own input actions or events. This is very useful, especially when you try to build a complex app and you want to display in a certain portion of the screen different information, while keeping the rest as it is. Now let's move to Android Studio and see how the code looks and how the app will behave in the emulator. You will start by opening Android Studio, then you create a new project. This is going to be an empty activity. You click Next. I don't change anything, I just leave it as it is. Make sure you have Java programming language, and then you click Finish. Once the project has loaded completely, you should see something like this on the screen. We don't need the project folder for now, so we can just minimize it. We'll go to activity main XML. This is where we will work a bit on the user interface. This is what we have at this time. We have only the hello world text view. However, we don't need it, so we can just delete this. We will need two buttons, so you can just drag and drop the first one in your activity and then the second one. Okay, let's put it here. Next, you go to layouts and then you click on the frame layout, and this will be used to house the fragments. You just drop it on the screen as well. And starting with the constraint layout, we will modify a bit the attributes of everything we have on the screen at this time, and we'll search for padding. Again, make sure you have the constraint layout selected, so the entire layout. And for padding, you go here and you say 20 dp. This should be enough. Okay, you can see that everything has moved a bit on the right and lower. So you have here the padding. Going for the buttons, you can select both of them. You go for align, and then you say horizontally. You can also align horizontally this frame layout. And for the entire two buttons and frame layout, you select all of them, and then you will align them vertically. Well, at this time, you should have all your objects equally placed on the screen, left to right, and up and down. Let's work on the buttons a bit. We select both of them. And then you search for size. This is to increase the text size. 24 should be enough. We can also search for style. And then from style, you can select this small button, small type of buttons. Okay. Then you select the first button and let's change its ID to btn1. This will be button 1, and the text will say fragment 1, because this will open fragment 1. The second button will say, actually the ID first, btn2, and then the text will say fragment 2. We have the buttons. I think it would be a good idea to work a bit for the layout here for the attributes, and it will say instead of wrap content, we'll just stretch them from side to side to match the constraint. So this button has increased a bit, and we'll do the same for the second button. Okay, this way the buttons will be placed from side to side, occupying the entire space. When it comes to the frame length, we have to do something similar. So here we'll go for attributes and we'll say match constraints. Now you can see it respects the padding of 20 dp that we have set all around. However, the height is not yet set, so we'll say the height again, like before, we'll set it to match constraints. So right now we have the user interface completed. I will just save all my files. So you hit Ctrl S if you're a Windows computer, and then you can move to the next step, which is creating the fragments. For this, you open the project folder, you go where it says app, Java folder, you have your package folder, and then you right click. You will add a new. You go for fragment, and this will be a blank fragment with nothing inside, and we'll change its name. I find it easier to just call it fragment 1, 2, 3, or if the application will be more complex, then you can say fragment login, fragment email, fragment gallery, or whatever you will load over there. You click finish. Maybe you'll find the option to cancel all this automatically generated text, or in my case, I have no choice and the fragment is created with all this code. And you have the onCreate method and you have the onCreateView method. I'll just give you a quick information here. When the fragment is created, in its life cycle, the onCreate will execute first, and then you'll have the onCreateView being executed. If you need to add any code to the fragment, don't do the same as you would in the activity main here, where you put inside the onCreate some code if you want. If you do the same inside the fragment and you try to reference a view, like a button or an image view or something like this, then the application will crash. It will not work properly because during this onCreate method, the views are not yet created. So this will execute later. What I usually do, I create a new method. I will override the onCreated view, and I will use that one. But this will be the topic for a future video. For now, just leave everything as it is, except for the design of the fragment itself. And you can see that you have this fragment XML file. So right now you have only a text view inside. Now let's work a bit with the text view, and we'll just leave the layout as it is to match the parent, so the entire space. However, we'll search for size because we want to increase the text size. Actually, if you write text here, then you have access to the following: the text itself, which is displayed, and we will say fragment 1, so we know what we have. Then for alignment, we'll just set it on center. Okay, then text color. Okay, why not? Let's change the text color as well. We'll make it blue. Should be okay. And one more attribute, we'll search for gravity. But make sure you have the text view selected, and you go for gravity, and you set it to, I can't see it, here it is, center. Okay. At this time, you have your text saying fragment 1 in the middle of the display of the screen. I think it would be a good idea to change the background color as well. So let's do just that. We'll say background. Again, make sure you have the text view selected, and we'll change it to some yellow. This is not very nice. I think this should be okay. So this is enough for the first fragment. You can save everything, and then you can go and create the second fragment. And I will repeat all the steps in the same sequence. I'll just move a bit faster this time. I will just say fragment 2. At this time, we have the second fragment already set up. We have the same text, only this time saying fragment 2, middle of the display with some background, and I think this should be enough to demonstrate the point. Moving back to the activity main, the two fragments that we have just created and set up will be loaded here inside this frame layout. But in order for this to happen, we have to do several things. Let's just check the IDs. So the frame layout has this frame layout ID. The first button has btn1 as ID, and the second button has btn2 as ID. Let's go to the main activity. And here in the main activity, this is what we have to do. Obviously, we have to move down a little bit to create some space. And we'll just say button btn1 equals find view by ID, and we'll reference the first button. We have to import this class, and we can just copy and do the same for the second button. At this time, we have both buttons referenced. Now we have to set some on-click listeners for both of them. So we say btn1. We'll set an on-click listener. This will be a new view on-click listener. The method is generated automatically. And the only thing we'll do inside, we'll just say replace fragment. And then we'll say new, and we'll give the new fragment to be loaded, and we'll say fragment 1. Okay, so when we click button 1, we will just replace whatever is inside the frame layout with fragment 1. I will do the same for button number 2. And button number 2 will send fragment number 2. Okay, so this is for on create. So I'll just write for you on create, so you know. Outside the on create method, we will write this because we need to create a new method, which will be called replace fragment. We'll say private void replace fragment, this one. And we'll pass as parameter the fragment that we need to have loaded. So we'll have a fragment, and let's just call it fragment parameter. We need to import this class fragment. We'll take this one here. And there are several things that we need to use now. First, we need a fragment manager. So we say fragment manager, and we'll just call it simple frag manager. And this will be equal to get support fragment manager. Next, we need a fragment transaction, and this will be a fragment transaction. I go for the Android X fragment app. Okay, and this will be equal to frag transaction. And we'll use from fragment manager. Okay, from fragment manager, we'll just use the begin transaction method. Okay, so let's get rid of these red errors. So we'll just import here the proper class. Okay, no more error. Closing the method, we have only 2 lines of code left. We'll say fragment section, and then we'll use the replace. We have a replace method saying resource ID. I'll explain in a moment. So when the user presses a button, any button, we take the proper fragment that we need to have loaded inside the frame layout, and we send it to this replace fragment method. And this is a method that we have created. So the replace fragment takes what we need to have loaded and creates a fragment manager, creates a fragment transaction, and then the fragment transaction takes the fragment and places it inside this frame layout, and then commits the transaction. And this is all that there is to it. This is just to show you how fragments work. And let's run the app and see exactly how it will look in the emulator. The app has loaded in the emulator, and as you can see right now, we have the 2 buttons, fragment 1 and fragment 2. However, there is nothing loaded in the frame layout. When I press any of the buttons, the proper fragment will load. Let's say we press fragment 1 button, and then you have fragment 1 loaded. You press the second button and you have fragment 2 loaded. Now inside these fragments, you may have images, buttons, other code, something else happening. Doesn't matter, but for now, just have an idea how you can create fragments, place them on the screen, and commute between them or change them from one to another. In my next video, I will show you in depth how to put other objects, other controls inside fragments and how to use them. Until such time, keep practicing, keep learning, and have a good day. Thank you for watching.